My bank account was flatlining, and my landlord wasn't exactly the sentimental type. Every email he sent felt less like a reminder and more like a countdown to being out on the street. I'd spent weeks applying for anything and everything, flipping burgers, scrubbing floors, and got nothing but polite no's, or even worse, total silence. The city had chewed me up and was about to spit me out. Desperation is a funny thing. It makes you look in places you'd normally scroll right past. That's when I saw the ad. It was buried deep on some job board under miscellaneous, which is basically where careers go to die. Toll booth operator night shift, Highway 86. I almost laughed. Highway 86 had been shut down for as long as I could remember. There was some local legend about a horrific pileup decades ago. Something with a school bus and a chemical tanker. The kind of ghost story you tell at sleepovers. Nobody used that road. But then my eyes hit the next line. The pay. It was double the going rate for that kind of gig. Double. And then, the three magic words. Cash, no questions asked. I should have known right then. A job that pays you double, in cash, for a road nobody uses? That's not a job posting. It's a warning label. But my landlord's latest email was burning a hole in my inbox, and the thought of that cash was just too tempting. It was a siren song for the desperate, and I was swimming straight for the rocks. I made the call. The guy on the other end had a gravelly, bored voice. He didn't ask for a resume, didn't want references. He just asked if I could start tonight. I said yes. His only instruction was to show up before sunset. The booth was unlocked, he said, and my training would be waiting for me inside. I drove out of the city as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood red. The further I went, the more the world seemed to peel away, replaced by overgrown fields and skeletal trees. The entrance to Highway 86 was just like the stories. A rusted chain-link gate with a single lane carved out. A newer sign was bolted to the fence. Toll collector on duty. It felt like a sick joke. My real training was waiting for me inside the cramped, dusty booth. It wasn't a manual or a note. It was an old VHS tape sitting next to a tiny, grimy TV/VCR combo. The handwritten label was faded, the writing shaky. It just said, "Booth rules." I picked it up, sending a small puff of dust into the air. I thought it had to be a prank, some stupid hazing ritual. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The booth itself was a time capsule. The glass was thick, probably bulletproof once, but now it was clouded with grime and had spidery cracks in the corners. The counter was worn smooth, littered with the ghosts of old transactions. A dried-out pen, a single tarnished penny, and a faint, sticky ring where a coffee cup must have sat for a decade. The air was thick with the smell of dust, damp concrete, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet, like old blood. I ran a hand over the control panel. Most of the buttons were cracked and faded. One large green button said gate, and a red one next to it said lock. Simple enough. I sank into the creaking chair, the silence of the abandoned highway pressing in on me. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was heavy, expectant, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The sun had completely vanished, and the only light came from a single flickering fluorescent bulb overhead, casting long, dancing shadows. My phone had lost service about 5 miles back. I was completely alone. My eyes fell back on the VHS tape. Booth rules. The sheer absurdity of it made me do it. What kind of training comes on a format that died 20 years ago? with a sigh that was half boredom and half jitters. I pushed the tape into the VCR. The machine whirred and groaned in protest. The screen flickered to life. The image was grainy, warped at the edges, with those tracking lines you always see on old tapes. The date stamp in the corner read, October 26th, 1988. The camera was pointed right where I was sitting, a shaky handheld shot of the booth's interior. Then the sound kicked in. Beneath a low hiss, a voice began to speak. It was calm, detached, and utterly empty, like a pilot reading a pre-flight checklist. "Welcome to your new position," the voice said, the words a little warped by age. "Your tenure here depends on your strict adherence to the following regulations. Do not deviate. Your compliance is your survival. We will now review the rules." A cold knot formed in my stomach. This was way too elaborate for a prank. The commitment to the bit was chilling. I leaned forward, my amusement evaporating into a thin vapor of fear. "Let the tape play until the end," the voice continued, its calmness making it sound 1,000 times more sinister. "Do not stop it. Do not rewind it. The silence that follows is not your friend. Now listen carefully." The screen flickered. White, blocky text appeared over the shot of the empty chair as the voice read each rule aloud. Rule 1. The shift begins at sunset and ends at sunrise. Do not, under any circumstances, leave the booth during these hours. The lock on the door is for your protection. Use it. My hand instinctively went to the door. I'd noticed the heavy deadbolt when I came in, but hadn't thought much of it. Now it looked less like hardware and more like a lifeline. I got up and slid the thick steel bolt into place. The solid thump it made was reassuring for about a second, but it also felt like I was sealing my own tomb. I'm just humoring them, I told myself. It's a joke, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. Rule 2. From the hours of 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., you will not accept any currency minted before 1970. If offered, politely decline and say, "Sorry, sir, my machine won't accept that." They will not have a machine-readable card. I let out a nervous snort. "What, are ghost pirates going to pay me in silver doubloons?" I muttered. It was ridiculous, completely insane. Yet, the voice droned on, oblivious. The sheer weirdness of the rule was what made it so creepy. It wasn't about a monster. It was about old coins. Why? What happens if you take one? The tape didn't say. Rule 3. At some point during your shift, a vintage bubblegum pink Cadillac will approach. It will be in pristine condition. The woman driving will offer you a white flower. Under no circumstances are you to accept the flower. Tell her you have allergies. She will smile, and she will leave. This one sent a genuine shiver down my spine. It was just so specific. A pink Cadillac, a white flower. This felt like it was ripped straight from one of those old urban legends about phantom headlights and ghostly hitchhikers. Was this job just some bizarre, immersive ghost tour? That hazard pay was starting to make a lot more sense. Rule 4. Between 1 a.m. and 1:15 a.m., you may hear a child laughing outside. It'll sound close. Do not look for the source. Do not acknowledge the sound in any way. Turn the radio on, even if it's only static. The sound it makes is better than the sound you are ignoring. I glanced at the ancient-looking radio on the counter. My blood ran cold. the detail about the radio. The sound it makes is better than the sound you are ignoring. That meant the laughter wasn't just some passing noise. It was something that wanted to be heard. It wanted a reaction. The thought of having to sit here in the dark, trying to drown out a child's laughter with static, made my skin crawl. Rule 5. If a vehicle approaches with its headlights off, immediately turn off all interior lights. Do not move. Do not breathe loudly. Wait for it to pass. It is not looking for the toll. It is looking for you. My eyes darted to the simple light switch on the wall. On, off. Life, death. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of any of this. Was that story about the accident true? Was this whole highway a graveyard? The words, "It is looking for you," echoed in my head. This wasn't a job. This was a vigil. I was a watchman at the gates of something awful, and these rules were the only thing keeping me safe. Rule 6. A long white limousine with tinted windows will arrive sometime after 2 a.m. It will stop at the gate. Do not speak to it. If it flashes its high beams exactly 3 times, press the gate button. Not 2 times. Not 4. 3. If it flashes any other number of times, press the red lock button and duck below the counter for 1 full minute. Another specific car. The precision was terrifying. 3 flashes. What happened on the second flash if a third never came? What was in the limo? The not knowing was a special kind of torture, forcing my imagination to fill in the blanks with things far worse than any tape could show me. Rule 7. At precisely 3:33 a.m., the telephone on the counter will ring. It has not worked in 30 years, but it will ring. Answer it. A voice will whisper a single name. You must write this name down. A few minutes later, a black sedan will arrive. The driver will ask for the name. Give it to him. This is the only toll you are required to collect. I stared at the ancient rotary phone at the edge of the desk. It was a museum piece. The idea of it ringing was more unbelievable than the Pink Cadillac, but the tape was so certain. A name, a black sedan, a transaction that had nothing to do with money. I wasn't a toll collector. I was a messenger, a go-between for things that operated on rules I couldn't possibly understand. Rule 8. If the main power fails, you have 60 seconds to engage the backup generator. The switch is in the maintenance closet to your left. Do not use your phone or a modern flashlight. Use the red emergency lantern from under the counter. Their eyes are sensitive to modern white light. The red light. It confuses them. My heart stopped. Their eyes? I whispered aloud. Them. The tape had finally used a pronoun. For the first time, it wasn't about cars or sounds. It was about a they. A they with eyes that were sensitive to light. This was the rule that broke me. This was the one that made every cell in my body scream, "Get out! Run now!" The deadbolt on the door suddenly felt flimsy. I reached under the counter and my fingers brushed against cold metal. The lantern. It was real. This was all real. Rule 9. Do not stop this tape. The final image you see is your only warning for what comes if you fail. We hope you have a productive shift. The voice stopped. The screen showed one last fleeting image. It was a glitchy mess, but I could just make it out. The interior of the booth, but it was destroyed. The glass was shattered, the equipment smashed. And there was a dark, glistening stain covering the floor and the wall where the chair was supposed to be. The image flashed, and the screen dissolved into static. The VCR clicked off, and the silence it left behind was 1,000 times worse than the droning voice. It was a physical presence, a suffocating blanket of dread. I was in a cage on a dead highway with a list of insane rules and the image of a bloody, wrecked room burned into my retinas. The joke was over. This was a test, and my shift had just begun. The first hour passed in a state of suspended terror. Every rustle of leaves, every groan of the old building sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I just sat there, rigid, my eyes glued to the empty road. My mind kept replaying the rules, a litany of madness. Don't take old coins. Don't take the flower. Ignore the laughter. I felt like a character in some twisted fairy tale, given a set of cryptic warnings before entering the enchanted forest. Except my forest was cracked asphalt, and my castle was a concrete box that smelled of decay. Around 9:45 p.m., I saw them. A pair of faint headlights far down the highway, slowly growing brighter. My heart leaped into my throat. A car, a real car. For a split second, I felt a surge of relief. Maybe it was just a lost traveler. The car, an old rusty Ford, rattled up to the booth, and an old man with a face like a crumpled road map peered out. "Evening," he grunted. "How much?" I stammered, my mind racing. "Be normal." "It's $5. He nodded, reaching into a small coin purse. My eyes widened when I saw what he was pulling out. Large, heavy-looking silver coins dated 1964, 1958. All way before the 1970 cutoff from Rule 2. My blood turned to ice. It was happening. "Here you go, son," he said, holding out a handful of them. The training tape took over. The words just came out. "Sorry, sir," I said, my voice shaky. "My machine won't accept that." The old man stared at me, his eyes boring right through me. Then a slow, unsettling smile spread across his face. It wasn't friendly. It was a smile of appraisal. "Machine, huh?" he rasped. "Clever boy." He slowly retracted his hand, put the car in gear, and did a slow 3-point turn. He drove back the way he came, his taillights swallowed by the darkness. I was left with my heart pounding against my ribs. I hadn't just completed a transaction. I had passed a test. About an hour later, the next one came. I saw the headlights first, a warm, soft glow. Then the car itself came into view, and my breath caught. It was a bubblegum pink Cadillac, just like the tape said. Immaculate. It glided to a stop, its engine purring almost silently. The window whispered down. The woman behind the wheel was impossibly beautiful, like a movie star from another era, with perfect blonde hair and ruby red lips. "Good evening," she said, her voice like velvet. She reached over and picked up a single perfect white flower. "For the lonely watchman," she cooed, extending it to me. My hand almost moved on its own. It was a kind gesture. For a split second, my brain tried to rationalize it. She's just a classic car enthusiast. This is a nice, quirky thing she does. Then Rule 3 screamed in my head. Under no circumstances are you to accept the flower. I can't, I stammered, shrinking back. Thank you, but I can't. Her smile faltered for just a second. A flicker of something cold and hard passed through her eyes. Why not? It's just a flower. I have allergies, I blurted out, the words from the tape feeling clumsy and stupid. Bad ones. Sorry. The woman stared, her head tilted. The dazzling smile returned, but it was a mask now. Allergies, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. What a shame. With a sigh, she placed the flower on her dashboard. Well, you have a safe night. The window glided up. The pink Cadillac did the same slow turn as the old man and drove back into the darkness. I watched it go, trembling. I had the distinct feeling I hadn't just refused a flower. I had refused an invitation, and I was damn glad I had. The clock ticked past 1 a.m. This was the one I was dreading. The laughter. I sat there straining my ears, listening. 1:05, nothing. 1:10, still nothing. Maybe I'd get lucky. Then I heard it. Faint at first, a high-pitched giggle from all directions at once. It sounded like a little girl playing, crisp and clear, as if she were right outside my door. Do not acknowledge it. The laughter came again, louder this time. A happy, innocent sound that was the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. I had an overwhelming urge to peek outside, to see who was there. The sound was bait. Turn the radio on. My shaking hand reached for the old radio. I twisted the knob and static erupted from the speaker. I cranked the volume, filling the booth with a roar of white noise. The laughter was still there, weaving in and out of the static. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands over my ears. It felt like an eternity, but it was only a few minutes. At 1:16 a.m., it just stopped. I slowly turned the radio down. The silence it left behind was just as bad. I was drenched in sweat. 3 rules down. Hours to go. I didn't think I was going to make it. The hours crawled by. The highway was dead silent. My nerves were shot. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. Every shadow seemed to move. I watched the clock tick towards 3:33 a.m., my stomach churning. But something else happened first. Around 2:45 a.m., I saw 2 orbs of faint, hazy light, hovering about 4 feet off the ground, moving slowly down the highway toward me. There was no car attached to them. They were just floating there, silently. This wasn't in the rules. This was new. They stopped about 50 feet from the booth, pulsing softly. I felt a weird, hypnotic pull to go outside and see what they were. And then I saw him. On the far side of the highway, just at the edge of the woods, a figure was standing. Just a shape of a man, perfectly still, watching the booth. Watching me. A thought, cold and sharp as ice, cut through my panic. A warning not from the tape, but from some deeper, primal instinct. He's looking for a replacement. The figure lifted a hand and waved. A slow, casual wave. My body reacted before my brain could. I didn't just duck. I threw myself from the chair, crashing to the floor behind the solid metal base of the counter. I lay there, gasping for air, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Then I heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap on the glass of the booth window, right where my head had been seconds before. He had crossed the highway. I stayed balled up on the floor, not daring to breathe. The patient tapping continued for what felt like forever, then stopped. I heard the crunch of gravel as he walked away. After a minute that stretched into a decade, I slowly raised my head. The lights were gone. The man was gone. I had survived. But I knew that if I had been a fraction of a second slower, I'd be the one standing across the road now, waiting to wave at the next guy. I scrambled back into my chair, shaking uncontrollably just as the limousine appeared. Long, white, and silent. It stopped at the gate. Rule 6. My eyes were glued to its headlights. Flash. The high beams were blinding. 1. Flash. 2. I held my breath, my finger hovering over the green gate button. Come on, just one more. Nothing, just the 2 flashes. My mind screamed, not 2, not 4, 3. My hand slammed down on the big red lock button. A heavy clunk echoed from the gate. The instant my finger left the button, I dove under the counter again. The moment I was hidden, a high-pitched metallic shriek tore through the night. It was a sound of pure rage. Then came the banging, a deafening boom, boom, boom against the side of the booth. The whole structure shook. I squeezed my eyes shut, positive the walls were about to buckle. I counted out 60 seconds in my head, each number a lifetime. At 60, the banging stopped. The shrieking faded. Just as I thought it was over, the old rotary phone on the desk began to ring. Bring. Bring. The sound was impossibly loud. I looked at my watch. 3:33 a.m. on the dot. Shaking, I pulled myself up and grabbed the receiver. "Hello?" I whispered. A sound came from the earpiece like dry leaves skittering across pavement. It whispered a single name. Eleanor. The line went dead. I fumbled for the pen and notepad, my hand barely able to write the letters. Eleanor. As my pen lifted from the paper, the lights flickered and died. Total darkness. Power out. Rule 8. Panic seized me. 60 seconds. I scrambled under the counter, hands frantically searching for the emergency red lantern. I found the switch and flicked it. A deep, bloody red light filled the booth. Shadows writhed in the corners. Generator switch. Maintenance closet. I lurched up and yanked the closet door open. I couldn't see a switch. Where was it? Then I heard a low, guttural breathing right outside the window. And scratching. A light scraping sound on the glass. Their eyes are sensitive to modern white light. My phone. My flashlight was a tap away. So easy, so bright. The 60 seconds were ticking away. The scratching got more insistent, the breathing heavier. My hand went to my pocket. I could end this, find the switch, drive them away. But the rule. Just as my fingers closed around my phone, I saw it in the dim red glow. A large, rusted lever on the back wall of the closet. The generator switch. I lunged for it, grabbed it with both hands, and threw all my weight into it. With a deafening crack, it gave way. The fluorescent bulb overhead flickered back on, flooding the booth with harsh white light. At the same instant, a terrible, piercing scream came from right outside, a sound of pure agony. I whipped my head around just in time to see a long, pale hand with fingers that were far too long slap against the glass before recoiling into the darkness. I stood there, panting, as a pair of headlights appeared. A simple black sedan. It rolled to a quiet stop. The driver's window lowered an inch. Numbly, I tore the sheet with the name Eleanor off the pad. I walked to the window and slid it through the tiny opening. Unseen fingers took it. The car drove to the now open gate, passed through and disappeared down Highway 86. The toll had been collected. I didn't sit down for the rest of the night. I stood in the corner as far from the windows as I could get, watching the clock. Nothing else happened. The horrors of the night had retreated, leaving me alone with my shattered nerves. As the first faint gray light of dawn crept over the horizon, it felt like a physical weight was being lifted. The birds began to sing. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. When the sun finally cleared the trees, I was gone. I didn't look for a supervisor or a key. I unbolted the door, stumbled into the morning air, got in my car, and drove. I went back the way I came, toward the city, toward a world where things made sense. I never got paid. I didn't want the money. It felt cursed. I blocked the number I had called and never told anyone the full story. Who would believe me? But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I know the feeling of that cold dread, the certainty that you're a tiny thing in a world full of ancient, hungry forces. I survived the night, but a part of me never left that booth. It's still there in the dark, listening for a child's laughter, watching for cars that aren't there, and holding its breath as something taps, taps, taps on the glass. And every now and then, when I'm driving late at night and see a car in my rearview mirror, I find myself praying that it isn't a vintage bubblegum pink Cadillac. That was the single most terrifying night of my life, and I'm just glad I could share the story with you. If you've ever had a creepy job or an experience you just can't explain, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want more stories from the dark corners of the world, make sure to like and subscribe. Stay safe out there.